Okay, welcome back. We're up to episode 7 of the Mueller report audiobook. We're still talking about the events of June 9, 2016, which is the meeting in Trump Tower. So we're reading from page 116. Veselnitskaya was in New York on June 9, 2016 for appellate proceedings in the Privé on civil forfeiture litigation. That day, Veselnitskaya called Ranit Alkmetson, a Soviet-born US lobbyist, redacted, and when she learned he was in New York, invited him to lunch. Alkmetson told the office that he had worked on issues relating to the Magnitsky Act and had worked on the Privé litigation. Kavelades and Anatoly Samoshonov, a Russian-born translator who also assisted Veselnitskaya with Magnitsky-related lobbying and the Privé case, also attended the lunch. I'll just check the footnotes here on this page. There's a substantive one here, written responses of Donald Trump, 20th of November 2018 at 8. We considered whether one sequence of events suggested that candidate Trump had contemporaneous knowledge of the 9 June meeting. On June 7, 2016, Trump announced his intention to give a major speech, probably Monday of next week, which would have been June 13, about all the things that have taken place with the Clintons. See, e.g. Philip Bump, What We Know About the Trump Tower Meeting, Washington Post, August 7, 2018. Following the June 9 meeting, Trump changed the subject of his planned speech to national security, but the office did not find evidence that the original idea for the speech was connected to the anticipated June 9 meeting, or that the change of topic was attributable to the failure of the meeting to produce concrete evidence about Clinton. Other events, such as the Pulse nightclub shooting on June 12, could well have caused the change. The President's written answers to our questions state that the speech's focus was altered in light of the Pulse nightclub shooting. See written responses. As for the original topic of the June 13 speech, Trump has said that he expected to give a speech referencing a publicly available negative information about the Clintons, and that the draft of the speech prepared by campaign staff was based on publicly available material, including in particular information from the book Clinton Cash by Peter Schweitzer. In a later June 22 speech, Trump did speak extensively about allegations that Clinton was corrupt, drawing from the Clinton Cash book. See full transcript. And back to the report. According to several participants in the lunch, Veselnitskaya showed Alkmetson a document alleging financial misconduct by Bill Browder and the Ziff brothers, Americans with business in Russia, and those individuals subsequently making political donations to the DNC. Some redaction there. The group then went to the Trump Tower for the meeting. Conduct of the meeting. Trump Jr. and Kushner participated on the Trump side, while Kavelades, Samochornov, Armekson and Goldstone attended with Veselnitskaya. The office spoke to every participant excepting Veselnitskaya and Trump Jr., the latter of whom declined to be voluntarily interviewed by the office. Redaction there. The meeting lasted approximately 20 minutes. Redaction. Goldstone recalled that Trump Jr. invited Veselnitskaya to begin but did not say anything about the subject of the meeting. Participants agreed that Veselnitskaya stated that the Ziff brothers had broken Russian laws and had donated their profits to the DNC or the Clinton campaign. She asserted that the Ziff brothers had engaged in tax evasion and money laundering in both the United States and Russia. Redaction there. According to Alkmetson, Trump Jr. asked follow-up questions about how the alleged payments could be tied specifically to the Clinton campaign, but Veselnitskaya indicated that she could not trace the money once it entered the United States. Kavelades similarly recalled what Trump Jr. asked, what they have on Clinton, and Kushner became aggravated and asked, "What are we doing here?" Alkmetson then spoke about US sanctions imposed under Magnitsky Act and Russia's response prohibiting US adoption of Russian children. Several participants recalled that Trump Jr. commented that Trump is a private citizen and there is nothing they could do at the time. Trump Jr. also said that while they could revisit the issue if and when they were in government. Notes that Manafort took on his phone reflect the general flow of the conversation, although not all of its details. At some point in the meeting, Kushner sent an iMessage to Manafort stating, "Waste of time," followed immediately by two separate emails to assistants at Kushner companies with requests that they call him to give him an excuse to leave. Samachornov recalled that Kushner departed the meeting before it concluded. Veselnitskaya recalled the same when interviewed by the press in July 2017. Veselnitskaya's press interviews and written statements to Congress differ materially from other accounts. In July 2017 press interview, Veselnitskaya claimed that she has no connection to the Russian government and had not referred to any derogatory information concerning the Clinton campaign when she met with Trump campaign officials. Veselnitskaya's November 2017 written submission to the Senate Judiciary Committee stated that the purpose of the June 9 meeting was not to connect with the Trump campaign, but rather to have a private meeting with Donald Trump Jr., a friend of my good acquaintance's son, on the matter of assisting me or my colleagues in informing the Congress members as to the criminal nature of manipulation and interference with the legislative activities of the US Congress. In other words, Veselnitskaya claimed her focus was on Congress and not the campaign. No witness, however, recalled any reference to Congress during the meeting. Veselnitskaya also maintained that she attended the meeting as a lawyer of Denis Katsev, the previously mentioned owner of Privezon Holdings, but she did not introduce herself in this capacity. In a July 2017 television interview, Trump Jr. stated that while he had no way to gauge the reliability, credibility or accuracy of what Goldstone had stated was the purpose of the meeting, if someone has information on our opponent, maybe this is something, I should hear them out. Trump Jr. further stated in September 2017 congressional testimony that he thought he should listen to what Rob and his colleagues had to say. Depending on what, if any, information was provided, Trump Jr. stated he could then consult with counsel and make an informed decision as to whether to give it any further consideration. After the June 9 meeting concluded, Goldstone apologised to Trump Jr. According to Goldstone, he told Trump Jr. redacted and told M.N. Aglarov in a phone call that the meeting was about adoption. Aris Aglarov called Kavalides to report in after the meeting, but before Kavalides could call, Aris called him. With Veselnitskaya next to him, Kavalides reported that the meeting had gone well, but he later told Aris Aglarov that the meeting about the Magnitsky Act had been a waste of time because it was not with lawyers and they were preaching to the wrong crowd. Post-June 9 events. Veselnitskaya and Aris Aglarov made at least two unsuccessful attempts after the election to meet with Trump representatives to convey similar information about Browder and the Magnitsky Act. On November 23, 2016, Kavalides emailed Goldstone about setting up another meeting with the Tea People and sent a document bearing allegations similar to those conveyed on June 9. Kavalides followed up with Goldstone stating that Mr. A, which Goldstone understood to mean Aris Aglarov, called to ask about the meeting. Goldstone emailed the document to Rona Graf saying that Aris Aglarov has asked me to pass on this document in the hope it can be passed on to them, to the appropriate team. If needed, a lawyer representing the case is in New York currently and happy to meet with any member of the transition team. According to Goldstone, around January 2017, Kavalides contacted him again and set up another meeting, but Goldstone did not make the request. The investigation did not identify evidence of the transition team following up. Participants in the June 9, 2016 meeting began receiving inquiries from attorneys representing the Trump Organization starting in approximately June 2017. On approximately June 2, 2017, Goldstone spoke with Alan Garton, General Counsel of the Trump Organization, about his participation in the June 9 meeting. The same day, Goldstone emailed Veselnitskaya's name to Garton, identifying her as the woman who was the attorney who spoke at the meeting from Moscow. Later in June 2017, Goldstone participated in a lengthier call with Garton and Alan Futerfas outside counsel for the Trump Organization, and subsequently personal counsel for Trump Jr. On June 27, 2017, Goldstone emailed Emin Agalarov with the subject Trump attorneys and stated that he was interviewed by attorneys about the June 9 meeting who were concerned because it links Don Jr. to officials from Russia, which he has always denied meeting. Goldstone stressed that he did say at the time that this was an awful idea and a terrible meeting. Emin Agalarov sent a screenshot of the message to Kavalates. On June 9, the June 9 became public in July 2017. In a July 9, 2017 text message to Emin Agalarov, Goldstone wrote, "I made sure I kept you and your father out of this story. If contacted, I could do a dance and keep you out of it," Goldstone added. "FBI now investigating. And I hope this favour was worth for your dad. He could blow up." On July 12, 2017, Emin Agalarov complained to Kalavades that his father Aris never listens to him and that their relationship with Mr. T has been thrown down the drain. The next month, Goldstone commented to Emin Agalarov about the volume of publicity the June 9 had generated, stating that his reputation was basically destroyed by this dumb meeting which your father insisted on, even though Ike and me told him would be bad news and not to do. Goldstone added, "I am not able to respond out of courtesy to you and your father, so am painted as some mysterious link to Putin." After public reporting on the June 9 meeting began, representatives from the Trump Organization also reached out to participants. On July 10, 2017, Futerfis sent Goldstone an email with a proposed statement for Goldstone to issue, which read, "As the person who arranged the meeting, I can definitively state that the statements I've read by Donald Trump Jr. are 100% accurate. The meeting was a complete waste of time, and Don was never told Ms. Veselnitskaya's name prior to the meeting. Ms. Veselnitskaya mostly talked about the Magnitsky Act and Russian adoption laws, and the meeting lasted 20 to 30 minutes at most. There was never any follow-up, and nothing ever came of the meeting." A redaction: the statement drafted by Trump Organization representatives was redacted. He proposed a different statement, asserting that he had been asked by his client in Moscow, Emin Agalarov, to facilitate a meeting between a Russian attorney, Natalia Veselnitskaya, and Donald Trump Jr. The lawyer had apparently stated that she had some information regarding funding to the DNC from Russia, which she believed Mr. Trump Jr. might find interesting. Goldstone never released either statement. On the Russian end, there was also communications about what participants should say about the June 9 meeting. Specifically, the organisation that hired Samachornov, an anti-Magnitsky Act group controlled by Veselnitskaya and the owner of Previzon, offered to pay $90,000 of Samachornov's legal fees. At Veselnitskaya's request, the organisation sent Samachornov a transcript of a Veselnitskaya press interview, and Samachornov understood that the organisation would pay his legal fees only if he made statements consistent with Veselnitskaya's. Samachornov declined, telling the office that he did not want to perjure himself. The individual who conveyed Veselnitskaya's request to Samachornov stated that he did not expressly condition payment on following Veselnitskaya's answers, but in hindsight recognised that by sending the transcript, Samachornov could have interpreted the offer of assistance to be conditioned to contradicting Veselnitskaya's account, not contradicting Veselnitskaya's account. Volume 2, Section 2 discusses interactions between President Trump Jr. and others in June and July 2017 regarding the June 9 meeting. 6. Events at the Republican National Convention. Trump campaign officials met with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak during the week of the Republican National Convention. The evidence indicates that those interactions were brief and non-substantive. During platform committee meetings immediately during the convention, J.D. Gordon, a senior campaign advisor on policy and national security, diluted a proposed amendment for the Republican Party platform expressing support for providing lethal assistance to Ukraine in response to Russian aggression. Gordon requested that platform committee personnel revise the proposed amendment to state that only appropriate assistance be provided to Ukraine. The original sponsor of the lethal assistance amendment stated that Gordon told her, the sponsor, that he was on the phone with candidate Trump in connection with this request to dilute the language. Gordon denied making that statement to the sponsor, although he acknowledged it was possible he mentioned having previously spoken to the candidate about the subject matter. The investigation did not establish that Gordon spoke to or was directed by the candidate to make that proposal. Gordon said that he sought the change because he believed the proposed language was inconsistent with Trump's position on Ukraine. Ambassador Kislyak's encounters with Senator Sessions and J.D. Gordon the week of the RNC. In July 2016, Senator Sessions and Gordon spoke at the Global Partners in Diplomacy event, a conference co-sponsored by the State Department and the Heritage Foundation, held in Cleveland, Ohio, the same week as the Republican National Convention, RNC or Convention. Approximately 80 foreign ambassadors to the United States, including Kislyak, were invited to the conference. On July 20, 2016, Gordon and Sessions delivered their speeches at the conference. In his speech, Gordon stated in pertinent part that the United States should have better relations with Russia. During Sessions' speech, he took questions from the audience, one of which may have been asked by Kislyak. When the speeches concluded, several ambassadors lined up to greet the speakers. Gordon shook hands with Kislyak and reiterated that he had meant what he said in the speech about improving US-Russia relations. Sessions separately spoke with between 6 and 12 ambassadors, including Kislyak. Although Sessions stated during the interviews with the office that he had no specific recollection of what he discussed with Kislyak, he believed that the two spoke for only a few minutes and that they would have exchanged pleasantries and said some things about US-Russia relations. Later that evening, Gordon attended a reception as part of the conference. Gordon ran into Kislyak as the two prepared plates of food, and they had decided to sit at the same table to eat. They were joined at the table by the ambassadors from Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, by Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. As they ate, Gordon and Kislyak talked for what Gordon estimated had been 3 to 5 minutes, during which Gordon again mentioned that he meant what he said in the speech about improving US-Russia relations. Change to Republican Party platform. In preparation for the 2016 convention, foreign policy advisors to the Trump campaign, working with the Republican National Committee, reviewed the 2012 convention's foreign policy platform to identify divergence between the earlier platform and candidate Trump's positions. The campaign team discussed toning down language from the 2012 platform that identified Russia as the country's #1 threat, given the candidate's belief that there needed to be better US relations with Russia. The RNC Platform Committee sent the 2016 draft platform to the National Security and Defence Platform Committee on July 10, 2016, the evening before its first meeting to propose amendments. Although only delegates could participate in formal discussions and vote on the platform, the Trump campaign could request changes, and members of the Trump campaign attended committee meetings. John Mashburn, the campaign's policy director, helped oversee the campaign's involvement in the platform committee meetings. He told the office that he directed campaign staff at the convention, including J.D. Gordon, to take a hands-off approach and only to challenge platform planks if they directly contradicted Trump's wishes. On July 11, 2016, Delegate Diana Denman submitted a proposed platform amendment that included provision of armed support for Ukraine. The amendment described Russia's ongoing military aggression in Ukraine and announced support for maintaining and, if warranted, increasing sanctions against Russia until Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity are fully restored, and for providing lethal defensive weapons to Ukraine's armed forces and greater coordination with NATO in defence planning. Gordon reviewed the proposed platform changes, including Denman's. Gordon stated that he flagged this amendment because of Trump's stated position on Ukraine, which Gordon personally heard the candidate say at the March 31 foreign policy meeting, namely that the Europeans should take prime responsibility for any assistance to Ukraine, that there should be improved US-Russia relations, and that he did not want to start World War III over that region. Gordon told the office that Trump's statements on the campaign trail followed the March meeting and underscored those positions to the point where Gordon felt obliged to object to the proposed platform change and seek its dilution. On July 11, 2016, at a meeting of the National Security and Defence Platform Subcommittee, Denman offered her amendment. Gordon and another campaign staffer, Matt Miller, approached a committee co-chair and asked him to table the amendment to permit further discussion. Gordon's concern with the amendment was the language about providing lethal defensive weapons to Ukraine. Miller did not have any independent basis to believe that this language contradicted contradicted Trump's views and relied on Gordon's recollection of the candidate's views. According to Denman, she spoke with Gordon and Matt Mueller, and they told her that they had to clear the language and that Gordon was talking to New York. Denman told others that she was asked by the two Trump campaign staffers to strike legal defence weapons from the proposal, but that she refused. Denman recalled Gordon saying that he was on the phone with candidate Trump, but she was sceptical whether that was true. Gordon denied having told Denman that he was on the phone with Trump, although he acknowledged it was possible that he mentioned having previously spoken to the candidate about the subject matter. Gordon's phone records reveal a call to Sessions' office in Washington that afternoon, but do not include calls directly to a number associated with Trump. According to the President's written answers to the officer's questions, he does not recall being involved in the change of language in the platform amendment. Gordon stated that he tried to reach Rick Dearborn, Senior Foreign Policy Advisor, and Mashburn, the Campaign Policy Director. Gordon stated that he connected with both of them. He could not recall if by phone or in person, and apprised them of the language he took issue with and in the proposed amendment. Gordon recalled no objection to either Dearborn or Mashburn, and that all three campaign advisors supported the alternative formulation, appropriate assistance. Dearborn recalled Gordon warning them about the amendment, but not weighing in because Gordon was more familiar with the campaign's foreign policy stance. Mashburn stated that Gordon reached him and he told Gordon that Trump had not taken a stance on the issue and that the campaign should not intervene. When the amendment came up again in the committee's proceedings, the subcommittee changed the amendment by striking the lethal defence weapons language and replacing it with appropriate assistance. Gordon stated that he and the subcommittee co-chair ultimately agreed to replace the language without armed assistance with appropriate assistance. Language about armed assistance with appropriate assistance. The subcommittee accordingly approved Denman's amendment, but with the term appropriate assistance. Gordon stated that, to his recollection, this was the only change sought by the campaign. Sam Clovis, the campaign's national co-chair and chief policy advisor, stated he was surprised by the change and did not believe it was in line with Trump's stance. Mashburn stated that when he saw the word appropriate assistance, he believed that Gordon had violated Mashburn's directive not to intervene. Post-convention contacts with Kislyak. Ambassador Kislyak continued his efforts to interact with campaign officials with responsibility for the foreign policy portfolio, among them Sessions and Gordon, in the weeks after the convention. The office did not identify evidence in those interactions of coordination between the campaign and the Russian government. Ambassador Kislyak invites J.D. Gordon to breakfast at the ambassador's residence. On August 3, 2016, an official from the Embassy of the Russian Federation in the United States wrote to Gordon on behalf of Ambassador Kislyak, inviting Gordon to have breakfast tea with the ambassador at his residence in Washington, D.C. the following week. Gordon responded 5 days later to decline the invitation. He wrote, "These days are not optimal for us, but we are busily knocking down a constant stream of false media stories while also preparing for the first debate with HRC. Hope to take a rain check for another time when things quiet down a bit. Please pass along my regards to the ambassador." The investigation did not identify evidence that Gordon made any other arrangements to meet or met with Kislyak after this email. Senator Sessions' September 2016 meeting with Ambassador Kislyak. Also in August 2016, a representative of the Russian embassy contacted Sessions' Senate office about setting up a meeting with Kislyak. At the time, Sessions was a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and would meet with foreign officials in that capacity. But Sessions' staff reported, and Sessions himself reported, that meeting requests from ambassadors increased substantially in 2016, as Sessions assumed a prominent role in the Trump campaign and his name was mentioned for potential cabinet-level positions in a future Trump administration. On September 8, 2016, Sessions met with Kislyak in his Senate office. Sessions said that he believed he was doing the campaign a service by meeting with foreign ambassadors, including Kislyak. He was accompanied in the meeting by at least two of his Senate staff, Sandra Luff, his legislative director, Peter Landrum, who handled military affairs. The meeting lasted less than 30 minutes. Sessions voiced concerns about Russia's sale of missile defense system to Iran, Russian planes buzzing US military assets in the Middle East, and Russian aggression in emerging democracies such as Ukraine and Moldova. Kislyak offered explanations on these issues and complained about NATO land forces in former Soviet bloc countries that border Russia. Landrum recalled that Kislyak referred to the presidential campaign as an interesting campaign, and Sessions also recalled Kislyak saying that the Russian government was receptive to the overtures Trump had laid out during his campaign. None of the attendees, though, remembered any discussion of Russian election interference or any request that Sessions convey information from the Russian government to the Trump campaign. During the meeting, Kislyak invited Sessions to further discuss US-Russia relations with him over a meal at the ambassador's residence. Sessions was non-committal when Kislyak extended the invitation. After the meeting ended, Luff advised Sessions against accepting the one-on-one meeting with Kislyak, whom she assessed to be an old-school KGB guy. Neither Luff nor Landrum recalled that Sessions followed up on the invitation or made any effort to dine or meet with Kislyak before the November 2016 election. Sessions and Landrum recalled that after the election, some efforts were made to arrange a meeting between Sessions and Kislyak. According to Sessions, the request came through CNI and would have involved a meeting between Sessions and Kislyak, two other ambassadors, and the governor of Alabama. Sessions, however, was in New York on the day of the anticipated meeting and was unable to attend. The investigation did not identify evidence that the two men met at any point after their September 8 meeting. Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort served on the Trump campaign, including a period as campaign chairman from March to August 2016. Manafort had connections to Russia through his prior work for Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska and later through his work for a pro-Russian regime in Ukraine. Manafort stayed in touch with these contacts during the campaign period through Konstantin Kilminik, a long-time Manafort employee who previously ran Manafort's office in Kiev and who the FBI assesses as to have ties to Russian intelligence. Manafort instructed Rick Gates, his deputy on the campaign and long-time employee, to provide Kilminik with updates on the Trump campaign, including internal polling data, although Manafort claims not to recall that specific instruction. Manafort expected Kilminik to share the information with others in Ukraine and with Deripaska. Gates periodically sent such polling data to Kilminik during the campaign. Just a substantive footnote here about Mr. Manafort. On August 21, 2018, Manafort was convicted in the Eastern District of Virginia on 8 tax, foreign bank account registration and bank fraud charges. On September 14, 2018, Manafort pleaded guilty in the District of Columbia to 1. Conspiracy to defraud the United States and conspiracy to commit offences against the United States, money laundering, tax fraud, FBAR, Foreign Agents Registration Act and false statements, and 2. Conspiracy to obstruct justice, witness tampering. Manafort also committed criminal conduct with which he had been charged in the Eastern District of Virginia, but as to which the jury hung. The conduct at issue in both cases involved Manafort's work in Ukraine and the money earned for that work, as well as crimes after the Ukraine work ended. On March 7, 2019, Manafort was sentenced to 47 months of imprisonment in the Virginia prosecution. On March 13, the District Court in DC sentenced Manafort to a total of 73 months, 60 months on the Count 1 conspiracy, with 30 of those months to run concurrent with the Virginia sentence, and 13 months on Count 1 conspiracy to be served consecutive to the 2 other sentences. 2 sentences resulted in a total term of 90 months. Manafort also twice met Kilminik in the United States during the campaign period and conveyed campaign information. The second meeting took place on August 2, 2016 in New York City. Kilminik requested the meeting to deliver in person a message from former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, who was then living in Russia. The message was about a peace plan for Ukraine that Manafort has since acknowledged was a backdoor means for Russia to control eastern Ukraine. Several months later, after the presidential election, Kilminik wrote an email to Manafort expressing the view, which Manafort later said he shared, that the plan's success would require US support to succeed. All that is required to start the process is a very minor wink or slight push from Donald Trump. The email also stated that if Manafort were designated as a US representative and started the process, Yanukovych would ensure his reception in Russia at the very top level. Manafort communicated with Kilminik about peace plans for Ukraine on at least 4 occasions after their first discussion of the topic on August 2. December 2016, the Kilminik email, January 2017, February 2017, and again in the spring of 2018. The office reviewed numerous Manafort email and text communications and asked President Trump about the plan in written questions. The investigations did not uncover evidence of Manafort's passing along information about Ukrainian peace plans to the candidate or anyone else in the campaign or the administration. The office was not, however, able to gain access to all of Manafort's electronic communications. In some instances, messages were sent using encryption applications. And while Manafort denied that he spoke to members of the Trump campaign or the new administration about the peace plan, he lied to the office and the grand jury about the peace plan and his meetings with Kilminik, and his unreliability on this subject was among the reasons that the district judge found that he breached his cooperation agreement. The office could not reliably determine Manafort's purpose in sharing internal polling data with Kilminik during the campaign period. Manafort redaction did not see a downside to sharing campaign information and told Gates that his role in the campaign would be good for business and potentially a way to be made whole for work he previously completed in the Ukraine. Just one of the footnotes. According to the President's written answers, he does not remember Manafort communicating to him any particular positions that Ukraine or Russia would want the United States to support. Another footnote, Manafort made several false statements during debriefings. Based on that conduct, the office determined that Manafort had breached his plea agreement and could not be a cooperating witness. The judge presiding on Manafort's DC criminal case found a preponderance of the evidence that Manafort intentionally made multiple false statements to the FBI, the office, and the grand jury concerning his interactions and communications with Kilminik. Although the report refers at times to Manafort's statements, it does so only when those statements are sufficiently corroborated to be trustworthy. To identify issues in which Manafort's untruthful responses may themselves be of evidentiary value, or to provide Manafort's explanations for certain events, even when we were unable to determine whether the explanation was credible. Back to the report. As to Deripaska, Manafort claimed that by sharing campaign information with him, Deripaska might see value in their relationship and resolve a disagreement, a reference to one or more outstanding lawsuits. Because of questions about Manafort's credibility and our limited ability to gather evidence on him, on what happened to the polling data after it was sent to Kilminik, the office could not assess what Kilminik or others may have given it to, did with it. The office did not identify any evidence of a connection between Manafort's sharing polling data and Russia's interference in the election, which had already been reported by US media outlets at the time of the August 2 meeting. The investigation did not establish that Manafort otherwise coordinated with the Russian government on its election interference efforts. Paul Manafort's ties to Russia and Ukraine. Manafort's Russian contacts during the campaign and transition periods stem from his continuing work for Deripaska from approximately 2005 to 2009 and his separate political consulting work in Ukraine from 2005 to 2015, including through his company DMP International. Kilminik worked for Manafort in Kiev during this entire period and continued to communicate with Manafort through at least June 2018. Kilminik, who speaks and writes Ukrainian and Russian, facilitated many of Manafort's communications with Deripaska and Ukrainian oligarchs. Oleg Deripaska consulting work. Approximately 2005, Manafort began working for Deripaska, a Russian oligarch who has a global empire involving aluminium and power companies. He was closely aligned with Vladimir Putin. A memorandum describing work that Manafort performed for Deripaska in 2005 regarding the post-Soviet republics referenced the need to brief the Kremlin and the benefits that the work could confer to the Putin government. Gates described the work Manafort did for Deripaska as political risk insurance and explained that Deripaska used Manafort to install friendly political officials in countries where Deripaska had business interests. Manafort's company earned tens of millions of dollars from its work for Deripaska and was loaned millions of dollars by Deripaska as well. In 2007, Deripaska invested through another entity in Pericles Emerging Market Partners LP, Pericles, an investment fund created by Manafort and former Manafort business partner Richard Davis. Pericles, it's probably Pericles. Pericles Fund was established to pursue investments in Eastern Europe. Deripaska was the sole investor. Gates stated in interviews with the office that the venture led to a deterioration in the relationship between Manafort and Deripaska. In particular, when the fund failed, litigation between Manafort and Deripaska ensued. Gates stated that by 2009, Manafort's business relationship with Deripaska had dried up. According to Gates, various interactions with Deripaska and his intermediaries over the past few years had involved trying to resolve the legal dispute. As described below, in 2016, Manafort, Gates, Kilminik and others engaged in efforts to revive the Deripaska relationship and resolve the litigation. Political consulting work. Through Deripaska, Manafort was introduced to Rinat Amitov, a Ukrainian oligarch who hired Manafort as a political consultant. In 2005, Amitov hired Manafort to engage in political work supporting the Party of Regions, a political party in Ukraine that was generally understood to align with Russia. Manafort assisted the Party of Regions in regaining power, and its candidate Viktor Yanukovych won the presidency in 2010. Manafort became a close and trusted political advisor to Yanukovych during his time as president of Ukraine. Yanukovych served in that role until 2014, when he fled to Russia amidst popular protests. Konstantin Kilminik. Kilminik is a Russian national who has lived in both Russia and Ukraine and was a long-time Manafort employee. Kilminik had direct and close access to Yanukovych and his senior entourage. He facilitated communications between Manafort and his clients, including Yanukovych and multiple Ukrainian oligarchs. Kilminik also maintained a relationship with Deripaska's deputy, Viktor Boyarkin, a Russian national who previously served in the Defense Attaché Office of the Russian Embassy in the United States. Manafort told the office he did not believe Kilminik was working as a Russian spy. The FBI, however, assesses that Kilminik has ties to Russian intelligence. Several pieces of the office evidence, including witness interviews and emails obtained through court-authorised search warrants, support this assessment. Kilminik was born on April 27, 1970, in D. Oblast, then of the Soviet Union, and attended the Military Institute of the Ministry of Defence from 1987 till 1992. Sam Patton, a business partner of Kilminik, stated that Kilminik told him that he was a translator in the Russian army for 7 years, that he later worked in the Russian armament industry selling arms and military equipment. US government visa records reveal that Kilminik obtained a visa to travel to the United States with a Russian diplomatic passport in 1997. Kilminik worked for the International Republic Institute's IRI Moscow office, where he did translation work and general office management from 1998 to 2005. While another official recalled the incident differently, one former associate of Kilminik's at IRI told the FBI that Kilminik was fired from his post because his links to Russian intelligence were too strong. The same individual stated that it was well known at IRI that Kilminik had links to the Russian government. Jonathan Hawker, a British national who was a public relations consultant at FTI Consulting, worked with DMI on public relations campaign for Yanukovych. After Hawker's work for DMI ended, Kilminik contacted Hawker about working for a Russian government entity on a public relations project that would promote in Western and Ukrainian media Russia's position on its 2014 invasion of Crimea. Gates suspected that Kilminik was a spy, a view that he shared with Manafort, Hawker and Alexander Vandenzwan, an attorney who had worked with DMI on a report for the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Some redaction there. Contacts during Paul Manafort's time with the Trump campaign. Paul Manafort joins the campaign. Manafort served on the Trump campaign from late March to August 19, 2016. On March 29, 2016, the campaign announced that Manafort would serve as the campaign's convention manager. On March 19, 2016, Manafort was promoted to campaign chairman and chief strategist, and Gates, who had been assisting Manafort on the campaign, was appointed deputy campaign chairman. Thomas Barrack and Roger Stone both recommended Manafort to candidate Trump. In early 2016, at Manafort's request, Barrack suggested to Trump that Manafort joined the campaign to manage the Republican convention. Stone had worked with Manafort from approximately 1980 until the mid-1990s through various consulting and lobbying firms. Manafort met Trump in 1982 when Trump hired the black Manafort, Stone and Kelly lobbying firm. Over the years, Manafort saw Trump at political and social events in New York City, at Stone's wedding, and Trump requested VIP status at the 1988-1996 Republican conventions worked by Manafort. According to Gates, in March 2016, Manafort travelled to Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida to meet with Trump. Trump hired him at that time. Manafort agreed to work on the campaign without pay. Manafort had no meaningful income at this point of time, but resuscitating his domestic political campaign career would be financially beneficial in the future. Gates reported that Manafort intended, if Trump won the presidency, to remain outside the administration and monetize his relationship with the administration